You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marni Battista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Kim DeYoung. How a choice can change your life. Ladies, welcome. I know you're going to love this, you indecisive little crew. I have brought Kim DeYoung onto the show. She is a seasoned choice coach. She's an entrepreneur. She's an author of the Book of Choice. She has over 2 decades of experience coaching creative, visionary entrepreneurs, and she has helped countless of individuals make meaningful choices to bring their ideas to fruition. And she is happiest when she's engaging in interesting conversations about choices. So I believe she's going to be very happy during this podcast. I'm super excited. So I just think I didn't even tell you this when we talked before, but the reason why I was like, you have to come on this show is because when I was literally in 4th grade, so I was like, 9 years old, my elementary school had a decision-making class, which is weird in the 70s. And my dad was like, you should go take that class. Decisions have always been a challenge for me. And I think that making choices and avoidance and not taking responsibility, I think these are all things that paralyze really amazing women and men and people of all ages. So I want to first know, like, how, I know you've been working on this book for like 15 years or something. Like, how did this become your passion and your mission?
It's such a funny story. So basically, I was being interviewed for something more than a decade ago, and I don't know what she asked me, but my answer was, what happens as we make choices and take action? How does our life unfold? And it was that question that caused me to think, what does happen? And from there, I began to look at all my choices. I started doing this really cool mapping process that was just meant to be for me. Well, when I showed it to a friend, she's like, I want it. And then it became an I want it. So next thing you know, in a year, 29 people had wanted me to look at their choices. It was just a gorgeous experience. So now I'm just immersed in all of this really great information around choice. And it was kind of like, okay, now I'm meant to do something with this. You know, I was having such good conversations about choices people had made, choices they wanted to make. I was like digging into my life. So it just became really, really interesting. And at the time I started, my kids were all teens. So it was so interesting to have this vocabulary with them as they're navigating like teenage kinds of choices. So it's just become something that's really meaningful. And I feel like I'm the luckiest person ever because I talk about something that people do every day, all the time. And to your point, so many get stuck about it. You know, that's such a reality.
Well, so let's talk about this, because someone was asking me the other day about why we feel like we don't have choices, right? Because, you know, you and I talked and I was saying, like, I'm all about like deconstructing the shoulds and really freeing yourself so that you experience freedom in your life, right? And if you talk to the average Jane or Joe, they'll be like, well, I don't have any choices. I mean, I have to take care of my mom. And, you know, my kid is this. And, you know, I have to do this. And my job is this. But they're like, you know, choices are for other people. So let's just start there. Talk to me about, why do we all have the ability to make choices? How do we work ourselves around and through that so that we can see the power that we do have?
Yeah, I mean, here's the truth. Like, I caught a statistic a bit ago that every day we make 35,000 choices, like a ridiculous number. I mean, and that's like, what am I eating? What am I wearing?
Yeah.
Left, like all of that. But then somewhere in that 35,000 are some ones that have meaning. And none of us are immune to it. Like it all demographics, we all have to make choices. It's the question of, do we let the fact that we have to paralyze us? So I'm sure, anybody listening can relate to that time when like you haven't made a choice and you've become like a big bottleneck in your life. Like you haven't moved forward with something for whatever reason. And we all have agency over our life. Yes, we all have work to do, kids to take care of, things to do. Like that's a truth, but we still do have control over the choices we make when we realize that we have agency over it. Like that's a really key thing. And I think it's an important quality to embody, to know that you have that control. There's going to be times in your life that something happens to you. It's the choice that's made not on your behalf. You get fired out, get sick, something happens. You still have the choice of how you show up. 100%. You always do. So it's kind of like finding that kernel of where in the choice do you have control around it.
I love that. It's funny. I was talking to someone last week about time management, which is something that so many people feel like have no choices around, right? Because your calendar becomes your life. And we started to get into it. And I think this speaks to your point, was that she didn't realize that she could reschedule a meeting or make her needs as important as her client or her partner, because she grew up where her mom taught her that, you are everybody else's hero, right? And really, to be a good person, you put other people first. And so I think I'd love for you to talk about, like, for those people that are like, well, I still don't know if I have choice. How do you sort of like open up your eyes so you can see, oh, I just think I don't have a choice because of my conditioning?
Yeah, it's so funny. I was just writing an article about something related to this recently, which is about the limiting beliefs that we sit with about something. So that's exactly what you're describing. And it's like we sit in story about who we were, how we were labeled, and all of that stuff. And all of those stories that if we don't consciously work to get rid of them or re-narrate them, they affect how we show up and how we make choices. So for example, if you've been told like, you're a bad money manager, like I'm just making that up as an example, like you spent money poorly back in the day. And all of a sudden you've held on to that, even though you do things better. So now you've like removed yourself from this ability to make choices around money because you're holding on to a story that could be archaic.
Yeah.
And until there's a story around it, and until you consciously say, wait, I need to go like dig into this, I need to retell that story, you don't even realize like it's this robotic thing that you're caught up in and not moving forth from. So a lot of it is just consciousness. It is kind of noticing where you're stuck, where you're not moving forward. And yes, we have, words from our parents, words from past people in our lives, but like you can change it. You can change it. I've certainly been through a lot. I've observed many people who've had assorted traumas in their life. And it's kind of like, how do they just, again, take control back for themselves?
Yeah, I think that if you think you have, like, if you feel like I really don't have a choice, you feel yourself saying that or feeling trapped, I would say get your book, which the link is in the show notes. And you want to go to yourchoicebook.com, but also really start to say like, wow, what's the story? Why am I making myself the victim here? What is one choice inside of a choice that you can make? Okay, I want to talk about the choice mapping system, because the minute you were like, oh, and then 29 people wanted it, I'm like,
yeah,
what does that even mean, a choice mapping system?
So it's a system that evolved over time. So basically, when I had this first idea for this choice that I wanted to go back and look at, I'm a bit of a visual person. So I grab a mind mapping software. And what I was looking at this time, 12 years ago-ish, was a choice that I'd made. And so in this mind mapping software, I'm noting the choice on one side and I'm keeping track of, from that choice, I met this person, I had that experience, I had that thought, I'm capturing it. So on one piece of paper, after capturing it, I was able to see all that had transpired in a 2-year window because of a choice that I made, which was kind of fascinating from a gratitude perspective to look back, but also equally fascinating from the perspective of, what choice could I make today and what could become possible. Well, that was map number one. And when I showed it to a friend who knew me as the Get It Done girl, which was a moniker from back in the day, she's like, Kim, you have something interesting going here. I know you naturally want to like do something with it, but can you not? Can you just enjoy these maps? She wanted to be the first person to get a map. So we explored a choice of hers. And I had no process at this time. I just was the person who knew how to connect. And I said, what choice would you like to explore? And I just followed my intuition and the lead of the Q&A that we had. And after a beautiful, 1 to 2 hour deep dive conversation, I would take the nuggets of what she had shared and then put it back for her in a map so she could view her choice from a different perspective. After 1 year and doing this for 29 people, my wheels began to spin. And it was like, okay, there's something going on here. How do I create this into a process? But interestingly, it was one of the editors of my book. I had never had this in my book in an early iteration. I had been writing for close to 10 years. And she said, I think you might need to share your mapping process. I said, I don't know that anybody wants to see it. It's like this geeky thing that I do.
Oh my God, Kim, it needs to be in the book.
Well, so she said that I had to like sit on my shoulder to watch, how do I do what I do so I can teach it? And even 18 months ago, I was ready to pull it from the book. I thought it was too complex. And I had another editor come into the mix. She's like, no, you just need to teach it in a way that people can digest it and understand it. And that's really what I've done. It's a very cool process that gives you a way to look at the things that are in your head, capture them visually. And I describe it. It's like a way to capture your truth on one piece of paper. It's a really beautiful experience in its simplicity. And, whether you're using a mind mapping software, you're doodling, you're painting, you're using sticky notes, like that doesn't matter. What matters is that you capture your words. You have a dialogue with yourself that you capture that you can come back on to say, oh, I made that choice and this is all the stuff I thought about. And 6 months down the road, like something's not working for you, you can go back to that map to say, do those words still resonate? If they do, then get back on the choice. If not, then course correct, adjust. But it gives us a really valuable tool. And it's been pretty amazing. And the funny thing is, I didn't set out to create it. It sort of evolved, which is probably why it's even better.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think too, the other thing that I think the value, having not done it, but just from what you're saying is, I'm really all about, radical faith and really understanding that there's a wisdom that comes from the cumulative action of the decisions that we make one by one. So for better or worse, so to speak, all the choices that we make, they're like literally like unlocking a treasure trove of like, now what do you know? Look how wise you are, right? And so I love the idea of doing this because it's literally, instead of just saying like, oh yeah, I suppose you're right. Like when you say it to someone and they just begrudgingly agree, even though they're like irritated, it's like, wait, no, look, friend, here's the evidence. Like, look at all the things that unfolded and look how much you learned and how wise you are. And you get to make a new choice or the same choice based on this faith that it always unfolds in a way that serves you, even though sometimes it doesn't feel great.
Well, and the whole thing about the unfolding is such an interesting thing for me because, and I this was a word that like came into my vocabulary at the time around choice, because the whole premise that when you do make a choice, no matter what, like you're always going to take action because you have to. But then the unfolding becomes this kind of magical stuff that starts to happen because of the momentum of your action. And, people show up, opportunities show up. And that's the other really key piece that is going to happen whether you're aware of it or not, but how much cooler if you're aware, and so that you're noticing all of that.
Yeah. And I think the thing is, like, you have to make a choice. Like, you have to make the decision. You have to take the leap. You have to kind of jump and know that there's like a parachute, sort of, even though you can't see it. But yet so many of us are, well, let me say this. So many of you people who are listening are so afraid to make a wrong, quote unquote, choice that we make no choice, or we make the choice that doesn't feel resonant. I just spoke to someone who's been on my list for a really long time, who's been with someone for 5 years that has proposed to her like 3 times, and she doesn't want to marry this person, but she's disempowered to make a different choice around the relationship. So that leads to my next question. So maybe she's listening. What are the obstacles that people face when they're trying to make an intentional choice, and how would she overcome that? How would she get beyond her fear of making the wrong choice?
There's no doubt. So like, imagine she knows. So here's the choice that she wants to make. She is saying, I choose to be in a great relationship. That's likely the choice, whether she's verbalized it or not. And so she knows that matters, but she's also like got fears and limiting beliefs around all of that, relationships that haven't worked, all the stories that she's holding on to. So for her to get past that, she's got to like see into the future. I mean, you brought up faith before. Like, there has to be an element of like imagining what can be. And I often see it as this tug of war. It's like, if what's possible is pulling you more into the future than the fear that's holding you into the past, like, you'll push forward. And, again, all of this requires being an alert, conscious human, like that. And obviously every woman that's drawn to you that's listening is that kind of a person.
Yeah.
And, they're an evolved person who wants to be in an evolved relationship and all of those things. So they got to do the work on themselves first. Like, you have to show up. I mean, first and foremost, be the person that you want to be to attract who you want to attract, and step into what's possible to let go of the fear of what's there. That's just the key thing.
I think the key word that you said twice in that sentence is like, let go. You have to let go of the fear so you can, let go of the indecision, right? Because I think I was telling my daughter once, I don't even know, I probably heard it for someone else, because I wouldn't have, I'm not this cool and wise, but it was something like, when you're in the moment, there is no such thing as fear. Fear is only in the future, and, fear is in the past. And so when we are avoiding, or we're afraid to make that big choice, like, you made the big choice to like begin this new chapter in your life and create this next level of your business, and launch a book. And I decided to sell my house, live in an RV, and write a book and change my business model. Like, we're all like evolving, or we're not. But the thing is, when you make a decision, I'd love for you to talk about this. You're either choosing the vegan burger or the hamburger. Like, one thing doesn't happen, right? And you have to sort of like commit to the choice. So what do you say to people who have been regret, or because I did this on the road. I was writing about this in my book about like the first 3 to 5 months where I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Right? Like, totally in regret and remorse, because I had an expectation that if I made the brave choice, then it would be perfect, because that's how it is on TV or in the movies. So what do you say when someone makes the choice and then it's scary, or it's not perfect, or they didn't meet the better guy within 2 months?
There's so many things wrapped up in that question, which is really interesting. Like, at the first, I guess I inherently don't believe that there's ever a wrong choice.
Yes.
There's always a valuable lesson. So even like, you made a ginormous choice: sell your house, change your business, go on the road. Like, a ginormous choice. Like, is it the perfect choice? Is there ever a perfect choice? Like, but it was one that obviously gutturally you knew you needed to make, and you did, like, a huge leap. So it's not unlikely that you would have doubts. You get out on the road, you're like, what the hell did I just do? Like, I left all this stuff. Like, of course, that doesn't mean the decision was bad. It means like, okay, I have to ground in. Like, there is some hard, like, not just because you make a choice doesn't mean it's like smooth sailing. Like, I made a big choice about a year ago. I chose to leave behind work that paid me really well, zone of excellence work. I was really good at. Clients loved me, but it wasn't purpose filled. So in leaving it to do this work, which fills me so immensely, that was a big leap. I walked away from money. I walked away from the cushion, but I also knew at this age, like, I don't feel like in that way, I needed to do that. Like, what life would I be living? So have there been scary moments along the way? Millions,
Right.
most days, and it's like, how do you manage the anxiety when you're in that place? But it doesn't mean the choice is wrong. It doesn't. So I do think the first thing with any major choice is like, why does it matter to you? Like, if you know why it matters, there's always going to be fear around it. But if it matters enough and what's exciting on the other side of possibility pulls you through, then like push the fear away.
Yeah.
You have to. I mean, you just have to.
There was a moment for me when we were in the Smoky Mountains where the Appalachian Trail is. And, I'm no Cheryl Strayed, so I'm not going to even pretend that I walked like 10,000 miles, but I did like probably hike for like 20 minutes. But there's this one part of this hike where you were standing at this little peak, and on one side, I think is North Carolina, and one side is, I think, Tennessee. And I just had this moment where that's how I felt. Like the name of this little place is called the Newfound Gap. And so I called it the Newfound Gap because like in my life, because I could see myself and I'd made a decision and I refused to commit to the new way because I kept comparing everything to the old way.
Yeah.
Right. And I wasn't like 2 feet in, and I obviously wasn't in Tennessee, and I wasn't being in North Carolina, and I was just like, where am I? And I think that like what you said is so brilliant. Like, you want to be able to create a stability of resiliency or a resource or foundation or a self-soothing or whatever you want to name it, so that when you come across the discomfort from making a choice, you know what to do. Because I know people that get anxious when they order the pasta, and then the guy they're at dinner with orders the fish, and they're like, oh my God, meal envy, right? Like, literally this stuff goes
at the very base level. Yeah. And so here's the truth. With every choice, like you were talking about the crossroads, vegan burger, hamburger, like as you make one choice, you didn't make another. Like, that is a reality. And it's just important to like, which one matters more? Like, you can't get both. You can't get both in this case. So pick a lane that matters and walk on it with strength, with conviction, like own it.
Oh my God. That is a me. That's a thing, what you just said. That's a hashtag or whatever it is. It's funny. My daughter, so I had all my kids together, but one of them was still in New York, and we were doing all this family stuff, and it was blended family, my ex-husband, my current husband, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and so apparently my daughter had said to my ex-husband, I have FOMO. And he said, you don't have FOMO, you have ROMO. She was like, what's ROMO? And he's like, the reality of missing out. You're missing out. You made the choice not to come. And I think I like ROMO.
That's great. Yeah.
Because it's true. Like, and we have to learn, I think like I would love to have like spiritually the JOMO, the joy of missing out. But the reality is, when you're doing something really big and there's a transition, I feel like it's like menopause, which I didn't know because my mom died so young, I never asked her. But like, I had this idea that menopause was like 20 minutes, and it's been like it's years. But sometimes the transition lasts a long time, and you have to be in ROMO, that you did make that decision. So that how do you do with that? How do you leap into what is present? So my last sort of question for you is then, if you're living what you're calling like an examined life, and you're being courageous, you're life checking yourself, you feel the pull to what is more important, and you do it. Why is this important? What does it mean to live this kind of life, and why is it important?
Almost the best way to answer that is almost the opposite. Like, imagine the unexamined life. Imagine the life where you're not paying attention to your choices, where things are just happening, where you're very much like living a life of happenstance. Not necessarily a victim, but you are definitely not in control, and things are happening. So flip it to a life of, call it examined, thoughtful, conscious, aware. Imagine that life. Imagine that life where you are bringing thought and awareness to your main choices so that you create what you want and it doesn't happen to you. That is really the magic in all of this. And imagine teaching that to your kids. I mean, seriously, like, who taught that to me at 20? Nobody. So how great to, like, in my case, my kids are 20, 23, 24, like, to be able to share that with them and their friends, and where does that bubble? Like, that is so impactful that we have not control. Yeah.
I love it. Your book and my book are going to go right next to each other on the shelves, right? Because you have to make a choice to live I'm defining a radical life as one in which you are creating change. You are creating choice, right?
Yeah.
And that is the life that is examined and imagined. And when you, like, I felt it in my body, Kim, when you said, like, imagine you didn't do it. And I imagined myself sitting in my same kitchen. Which, by the way, I probably said this before because it was so profound. But when I was in my house, Kim, and I had my little custom design kitchen that I loved, it meant so much at the time. And I had my little instant hot water, and I was making my coffee, and I would look out in my backyard, and I'd be like, this moment is the penultimate. Like, I'm in my kitchen, I'm looking at my backyard, drinking my coffee. In fact, on the last day, I cried. And I have had those coffee moments, like, literally all over the world in the last 19 months. And now here being in Colorado, and every single morning I make my coffee and I go stand in front of this window. And whether it was in March and I was looking at this, like, snow globe landscape of magical snow mountains, to this beautiful summer with the aspen trees, I never, in that moment when I was afraid to make the choice, I didn't know what was possible. I didn't know that it wasn't the penultimate.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is, like, if you can do this in a very aware way with structure, like you're talking about in your book, like, the world has, like, something more delicious and more delightful if you are willing to go on the journey. So I think your book is, like, I think every person should read it who's alive.
Well, that certainly is my hope. Like, again, like, everybody is affected by choice so much. And, it's a rich conversation. Like, imagine getting your girls together with their friends and all of that and talking to them as they're navigating, like, their personal choices, their professional choices, their relationship choices, and they're new to it and they're scared. And is it a wrong choice? And do they have baggage? And are they nervous someone's going to, like, get in their way? Like, these are big conversations. And, it's starting then. And it doesn't end. Like, I have gorgeous conversations with people who were in their 80s and they're navigating a whole bunch of other choices. Like, how are they living in the world at that age? I mean, it hits us at every decade, and our choices change through the decades as in terms of, like, what matters to us, where we are in this cycle of life. And that is so interesting. And it's a skill, like, you build on, and it's a confidence. I mean, that's really the key, like, how to have the confidence to make the choice that that's right for you, regardless of what others think. And I can't imagine if you asked 10 people, oh, should I sell my house and, change my business and get in an RV, like, that everybody would have said yes. Unlikely. But you wanted to do.
I did. In fact, so my daughter was dating a guy who was very sweet at the time, and we got the pleasure of going to his family's home. And I'll never forget this because I remembered it when I was in my moments of terror. And I said, yeah, I'm the kids are gone, like, I'm selling the house, I'm living life for me. And she looked at me, she goes, but they come back, right? She was like, why did you do that? They come back, right? And I was like, don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. And then my one daughter did move back to LA. And what's funny about this, Kim, is, and this is why it's unfolding, is she said, Mom, it was really hard for me that you sold the house. And when I thought, like, I'm going to move back to LA and you're not going to be there. And then she was like, oh my gosh, you're not going to be there. For the first time in my life as a child of divorce living in LA, I don't have to choose where I'm going to live. I'm going to, like, live with my dad during this transition period. I don't have to do that thing where I'm, like, going to your, and she was like, right, free. And I was like, wow, all the energy is in flow. And that's the beautiful thing. So everyone needs to go to choicequestions.com because there are 5 questions to ask before making a choice, and it's a free guide. And if you want to start to build this muscle, you definitely want to go to choicequestions.com. And then, of course, you will go to yourchoicebook.com and check out Kim's amazing book. And I'm just so happy that we met. The talk about like, the divine unfolding.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's so amazing. Your work is so important and so critical and such a part of my mission. Because the very name of this podcast is to life check yourself, which means that you check and you choose.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. So good.
So, ladies, where can they find you? Where can they follow you? I know you have a lot of stuff going on Instagram.
Mostly Instagram. I would say I'm having fun on Instagram. That was also a choice. It was like social media just started to tire me, but Instagram felt fun. And I made the choice based on fun.
Awesome. And what's your handle over there?
It's Kim DeYoung, but it's got some underscores in it. But if they do Instagram, Kim DeYoung, they'll find me.
Okay, awesome. And you can also check out Kim's website, KimDeYoung, DeYoung.com. And then, of course, you should totally subscribe if you're watching on YouTube and become a subscriber of Life Check Yourself. And you can find me on Instagram at Marni Battista. I'm on TikTok at Marni Battista. And whatever you do, make sure on the daily you life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now. Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWD VIP, that's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to DWDVIP.com. I'm Marni Battista, and let's talk soon.